Welcome back to Sparks of Joy Studio. It is Juneteenth and I had off today, so I decided to get you guys an extra video this week. This is a gorgeous little kid's wooden chair, like super, I guess, old-fashioned looking that I picked up. I am starting by painting it in the color Putty by Fusion. I do want to let you know that last week or this past Saturday, I told everybody that the paint color that I used on the one tote with the birds on it was the color Putty, and I was wrong. That was plaster. So it's still not the name for what I believe the color looks like, but that's okay. This is the color Putty, and I'm going to go ahead and give this chair, the entire thing, 2 coats of this color. Once that was dry, I came in with my finger sander and just very lightly sanded and distressed just the edges of this little chair. Now I'm taking some of the last of what I have of the Joie de Rose transfer set by IOD. I have been saving this specific part of this transfer set for something very, very special. That bird in the middle is just gorgeous. I actually usually cut them up. You've seen me put them, cut up the transfers and kind of organize them in different ways. For this specific part of this transfer, it fits so perfectly on the back of that chair. I did not mess with it at all. I just trimmed it so it would fit inside of that space. And now I'm pressing it down before I start rubbing it on just to make sure that it's got some good adhesion. And then just start doing what we do with rub-on transfers. I'm going to go ahead and start rubbing it back, or I'm sorry, rubbing and slowly pulling back the um, carrier sheet to get the entire piece transferred on. I also add a couple of excess pieces to the seat of the chair as well as on the front, and then I seal it up and we are done with project one. Here's a look at our finished project. In honor of Juneteenth, I am running a huge sale on my website. Everything is 50% off. So head on over. You don't need a discount code. I was going to have it end tonight at midnight, but because I'm getting this information out to you late and this video out later than I anticipated, I am going to allow it to run until 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. So head on over and shop. For our next project, I have this tiny little table that I had bought for my daughter as like a temporary nightstand for a little while. It was like 20 bucks on Amazon. I painted it with juniper, I believe, which is the cottage color, one of the DIY JRV cottage colors that is an all-in-one paint. I painted it with it. It actually took about 3 coats, I believe, to get it the coverage that I wanted. I wanted complete coverage. I wasn't distressing. And then I painted the top of the table in white swan to start because obviously I'm going to be decoupaging the rest of that beautiful uh, Rocycled decoupage paper from the Maker's Box that Sonnet Garden Blooms has put out onto this tabletop. I was inspired by Tara from the Reclaimed Ranch and how she did this amazing bench in her project. She didn't have enough coverage for the entire back of the bench that she created, so she actually hand painted the sides of it. It's amazing. I'm going to leave a link to her that video below because if you see what she did to recreate the sides of this paper and this style, it is impressive. I had a similar scenario where I did not was not able to get this decoupage paper to reach all the way to the edges all around the tabletop. So what I ended up doing was saving some of the pieces that are off to the side and almost like connecting them and decoupaging them on where there was still white. I will be honest, these bigger pieces, I'm still new to trying to figure out the best way to video this, so I did not get a clip of that, but I will show you something similar that I do in a project later in this video, where I do a similar method, I should say. So we're gonna finish this up and seal it. I do seal it with a Varathane sealer just to make sure that it is a little bit more waterproof, I guess, than what you would get with some of the polyacrylic sealers that are water-based. For our next project, I have this small bamboo cutting board that was in my stash. I had originally painted it. I think the very first color was a red color because it was originally going to be something I used at Christmas time. And then I painted over it with, I guess it was a tan color. It looks like it might have been Cathedral Taupe, sorry, by Fusion. And now I'm painting it with Parchment by Fusion because I do plan on using some decoupage on this piece. This is a piece of the Butterfly Masterboard, one of Rocycled's new decoupage papers from this spring, I believe. And I am right now trying to work it out to make sure that where I end up decoupaging ends up ensuring that the text is even and centered. I remember seeing Sonnet use this on a book cover, and I thought that was a really cool idea because it does look like a book cover, but I wanted to try something different. And so I am going to decoupage this on. And if you notice in the top left, there is that little like emblem or the stamp on the side that clearly is not going to make it onto my breadboard because it's up where the handle is. I want to show you how you can decoupage on top of decoupage to use that piece and also to use some of the extra scraps that I sand down on the tippy top of the handle that does not, where my decoupage paper will not reach. This is going to look a little scary, but what I do here is I am very, very lightly ripping off some of that paper to create a jagged edge. This will allow the decoupage paper that I layer over at the top of that handle to look like it's a naturally connected, like naturally apart, like there's no seam or nothing between the two parts of the paper. I also am going to very carefully um, tear off that edge. I don't think I got that on camera, but I sanded off the entire piece, making sure I had those extra pieces. And now I'm going to take the top, figure out the best placement to have it very seamlessly go together at the top of the breadboard. And I'm going to be decoupaging that little scrap onto the top. The other thing you saw me do there, because the paper was wet, I very gently pushed down into where the hole is, and that allowed a natural tear, but also allowed it to tear into the hole to kind of cover up the inside a little bit. And here I am with that extra piece that I wanted to decoupage onto the book. There's that empty space, not book, onto the breadboard. There's that empty space on the bottom right that I feel this will look perfect on. The other thing that this will show you is how it looks different for a piece of decoupage paper to be decoupaged onto the white that we typically will decoupage, especially using Rocycled's papers, or what it looks like when you're using a darker color or you don't have that lighter background. So I am going to take this and decoupage it on the same way, right on top of the now dry decoupage paper that is down on the breadboard already. I paint the edges and the back of the board in weathered wood by DIY. I also wanted to mention that one of the reasons why I wait until after I've done the decoupage to then paint, especially when I'm painting like right where there's the decoupage part will meet up, I guess have like a corner edge connecting them. I do this because when I decoupage, we always have to seal that paper, right? So you're going to be covering it with a polyacrylic or something to make sure that the paper is protected. When you're using especially something like DIY paint, it is going to be very easy to kind of clean up any parts where you may have gotten paint on the decoupaged part. All right, I'm going to use that butterfly masterboard again, and to kind of finish up these three little, I think they're MDF pieces of scrap wood that I got a while back, and I believe the back had been painted with Inglenook by Fusion, and I had done it. I'd originally thought of something for spring, never got it done, so it's just been sitting next to my craft table. So I decided to finish up these three little pieces today. I'm painting the fronts of all three with White Swan by DIY. I found three little butterflies that I felt fit perfectly into these three pieces of scrap wood in a way that there was a nice little background with them, but not so much to make it busy. So I really wanted the featured item on these pieces to be the butterfly. I'm misting my paper. I covered my entire piece with that liquid patina, and now I'm laying it down and very lightly smoothing it out to get rid of any wrinkles. Once that was done and dry, I came back in and very gently sanded down the edges to clean up the board. It's so beautiful to see how connected or how, I don't know, seamless this looks once you do that sanding. That's like probably one of my favorite parts about decoupaging. And then I came in with just a dry brush and that weathered wood to distress the edges of the piece, and I believe I ended up doing a little bit on the back. My main focus here is going to be on the edges and the corners, just to kind of like hide and maybe any imperfections, any mistakes, some of that white paint that might have been kind of pulled over to the edge. This just allows it to be a little more natural. I then seal up the entire piece and we are done. And now it's tag time. Of course, we have to do something with all of those scraps we have left over from today's projects. We are going to be decoupaging them on, all those scraps onto these little tags. I even have some where there was not enough paper to fit all the way across the tag. So I believe that I did this last week. I'm not sure. If not, I'll make sure that I do it again in the future. I showed a way that you could put two of the scraps together and still make it look pretty seamless on the tag. So I did that with all of these extra tags, and now in order to monogram them, I have another solution. Now I'm going to be taking some distressed oxide ink in the color Ground Espresso. The brand is Ranger, and I am wiping it onto the edges of each of the tags to, again, allow it to look a little bit more cohesive, a little more finished, give it a teeny tiny bit of distressing. But really the goal here is to just have it be a nice clean way, or I guess not so clean, but a nice way to have it look a little put together, a little bit more finished than if you saw just those edges with the raw wood. And now to monogram. We are going to be using these little Scrabble tiles. I got this in a bulk pack off of Amazon. I will say the only downside is there are a lot of vowels, which makes sense if you're playing Scrabble. But the downside is that I don't have the need for a lot of I's or U's. Even the E's are not as common as far as like first names go, but I am using what I have. And then, each week you'll get to see, or each time I share some of my tags with you, I'll show you some different ways that I put letters on or find ways to use the letters so that we end up having enough of each. I am using some Titebond Quick and Thick to glue these on. The only reason I didn't use hot glue is because the tiles were very slick, and I was worried with whatever finish was on there that they would not stick and stay on if it was glued on with just hot glue. While they were all drying, I took these beads, and I am going to be showing you another technique that I did last year. I really just took my stir stick, stirred it into that Oakum by Fusion, and then I'm just spraying it with a ton of water. So it's kind of, if you want to do it like proportioned, I would say like 3 to 4 parts water to 1 part of paint. It's very, very little paint, and it goes a long way with this method. I also do not recommend using too much paint because it will get gloppy and fill in those little holes in the beads. So I learned it the hard way. I use just a teeny tiny bit of paint and it does a lot. I then brought them outside, threw them onto this tray that I got at the Goodwill bins, and I'm spreading it around, allowing it to dry, and then using the same method I used last week to get them tied onto the little tags. One thing that I have yet to do, and I will make sure I get this done before I sell these, is the backs. I am going to use some antique wax to darken them up a bit just so they match and look a little more finished. So I didn't get that done before today's video, but that will get done. Another thing I wanted to show you, which is over here. This is where I take all my pictures because this is where the lighting is the best in my house. That's why you always see my stuff on the floor. This is all of the tags from last year that were left over, as well as tags that I've been working on. I have sorted them into these bins. And I believe what I'm gonna do at this year's craft fair is just bring these in these containers. And I wanna see if there's a way I can embellish these boxes to look a little prettier. But I think what I'm gonna do is I'm going to just display them inside the boxes, like maybe have a riser with like some of the letters in the back and then the other ones on the table. And then that way people can just find the letter that they are looking for and then like search for the style. So just to kind of give you an idea, I think this is one that's a little bit more full. Here's some of my ones from last year. So we have a variety. I think some of this one doesn't have anything in the back. Some of them I actually stamped the back too. Like here's the O, there we go, sweater weather. And then I have like, I had a bunch that, these actually were really popular last year. It's like supposed to be like Santa's belly. And then some of these I did in just yellow like this, which actually was more popular, surprisingly. I wasn't a huge fan of them, but the other ones I did in gold, where the letter was in gold and the rest of it was this way. Let's see.
this. So these are more like Christmassy. I think what I decided to do for this year is to have a variety. So I'll definitely, as I get closer to Christmas, do more Christmas-like stuff. But for now, I think what will probably happen is I'll have kind of like a tag time at the end of my videos, and it'll just be which one did I create this week, because it was a lot to do this all at once. So I definitely wouldn't want to do that. There's the one from last week. I definitely don't want to do what I did last year again. I would rather do them over time. So that's kind of the plan. Again, this was a very last minute decision last year for a random craft fair that I did like on the fly, and ended up being like by far my best seller. So I am going to go in more prepared this year. All right.
Thank you so much for joining me today. Don't forget, I have that huge sale on my website. Go check it out. The link to the website is in the description box. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you this weekend.